criminal justice sector, as we know, say it's prioritising gender-based crimes, GBV, such as rape and murder. But there are massive challenges that are in the way of doing that. NGOs pointing out that DNA processing backlogs is still seriously impacting our prosecutions. The sexual offences courts are not handling the cases with the urgency they deserve, many people are criticising. Monique Mortlock. So it's a very complicated issue. Where do we begin to try and get our criminal justice system up to speed on this? Good morning.
Well, if you're speaking to any of the officials that we spoke to yesterday, like Community Safety MEC Regan Allen, you would first look at budgeting these, providing adequate budgeting to the SAPS and to the Justice Department so that it can trickle down to where it is needed most, which in the MEC's viewpoint is more boots on the ground, more detectives, because as we heard yesterday also from a community safety, a community policing forums, that they are just, the detectives are inundated with their caseload. Then we're also looking at that DNA backlog. According to the Community Safety MEC, the last time they inquired from the SAPS, last year from September to December 2021, the DNA samples that needed to be processed went from 89,000 to 62,000. So although it seems as if the SAPS is making some inroads, it's still not enough, because we see so many cases either being withdrawn or thrown out of court or postponed time and time again, leaving the victims and their families to suffer secondary trauma. But to chat to us more about this, I'm speaking to Action Society's Community Safety Director, Ian Cameron. Ian, yesterday, Action Society, let me start with the statement that was released about the sexual offences courts and how it seems as if all the promises that were made to ensure that these sexual offences courts that were implemented to help with that congested court rolls that we see on a daily basis to help ease the burden, especially when it comes to those sexual assault cases. But what you as your organization has been seeing on the ground, this just isn't happening.
I think there's a dismal failure of the entire process. If we specifically look at the sexual offences courts, it's very clear that it's not functioning the way it should. So we did a test in the last week where we tested the telephone numbers, and 75% of the sexual offence courts listed by the Department of Justice didn't even work. So we couldn't reach anyone. So that's the first problem. The second problem is, remember that 1 in 5 cases don't even make it to trial when it comes to rape specifically. Every hour in South Africa, 5 women are raped, and those are the cases that we actually know of. Remember, we've got about 120 rapes reported per day, and only 1 in 9 rapes are actually reported. So it's far more than what we know. So we hear all these promises from people like Becky Cele, even Minister Ronald Lamola, all talk, no results. It is not happening. And it's true, we need more detectives, we need boots on the ground, absolutely. But without things like crime intelligence in place and actually hunting down these criminals, nothing is going to change. Conviction rates are extremely low. When it comes to sexual offences specifically, in these courts, successful conviction is less than 3%. Rape cases, successful conviction is less than 5%. So, and those are the cases that actually make it to court. Remember, there are hundreds, if not thousands of cases that don't even get to court. So it's extremely low, and it's one thing for someone like Becky Cele to brag about arrests made. It means nothing if the investigation isn't done. And if we speak to something or about something like the DNA backlog, the information that we received from DNA for Africa and the last response they received from the police on the 6th of May 2022 was that the backlog was at 58,000 cases. And remember, every case, to put that into context, has about 4 pieces of evidence on average that needs to be assessed. So that's more than 200,000 pieces of evidence that we're still behind. And on top of that, remember that that's a ring-fenced amount from the original 300,000 backlog. That doesn't include new cases that have been coming in every single day. So it's far worse than we think. So we're not hearing the truth from the South African Police Service, and we're not seeing the results. And they can also tell us that they've now putting another 12,000 members on the ground. It's not going to make a difference if they're not trained properly and they don't know how to handle these situations.
Thank you so much. That was Ian Cameron. We'll have to leave it there, but we'll definitely continue this conversation, and we'll also throughout the day be speaking to victims who have been on this court run for the last several years. And as Ian mentioned, some victims haven't even been able to see their cases even making it to court. It just gets stalled at the investigation point, and in some cases even gets stalled just in the making of a statement at a police station. And this is what organizations like Action Society is trying to change. They're trying to create this change on the ground by speaking to victims, by helping them, by assisting where they can.
Monique Mortlock, appreciate it. Keeping our finger on the pulse when it comes to this DNA backlog is our Monique Mortlock. I'm sure we're back to her again later in the morning here on eNCA. Now, coming up.